Well, I was born in Logan, Utah. I grew up in the rural farming area in the Salt Lake Valley. We had a business where we sprayed weeds on farms, and then later on we had a chicken business where we grew chickens and eggs, produced eggs. Later on, I flew for a living. I started out as a flight instructor, and then later on I became a corporate pilot and flew for a corporation that was based in the Salt Lake area. I then, later on in my career, I owned a janitorial business and then a fire and flood restoration business, and then I retired, and that brings me to where I'm at now.
My name's Glenn Craner, and I'd like to serve as the next Chubbuck City Councilman. I was born and raised in southeastern Idaho, and I attended Pocatello High School, Idaho State University, and Votech. As a former United States Marine in the Marine Corps, I have served our country, and I do love our community. Following my military service, my wife Jackie and I settled down in Chubbuck, where I worked for the Union Pacific Railroad, and Jackie worked for School District 25 as a school teacher. We raised 5 children here and have 13 grandchildren, many of whom still live near us in Chubbuck. I retired after a successful career with the UPRR as the Safety Training Supervisor for the Idaho Service Unit of the Western Region, where I was responsible for the safety and technical training for employees. With a strong commitment to accountability, individual rights, and constitutional freedoms, I am a strong believer in responsible, responsive, and accessible government. I started to attend City Council meetings on a regular basis over 3 years ago. I watched how suggestions from individuals in those meetings fell on deaf ears. I witnessed a lack of concern for the current citizens in the way that tax and fee monies were used to run the city. I saw how taxpayer funding was not utilized to the fullest, such as putting purchases out for competitive bid. A few examples of that would be the recent emergency purchase of the fire truck tender that was purchased in Florida, using city employees for the transportation of the truck versus common carrier, the past purchase and lack of citizen input on the North Bannock sewer connector, the recent emergency purchase of a city backhoe, and the recent sole source purchase of a booster pump for the Knutson property development. Emergency expenditures need to be questioned and detailed before making a decision to spend taxpayers' monies. And sole sourcing needs to meet more of a criteria than just being handy. I am for controlled growth in the city rather than a tax and fee and grow program. I'm not an advocate of the if you build it they will come philosophy. Our citizens need to have roads to drive on, subdivisions to live in that create a safe and nurturing environment for the children of our community. I have made it a point to observe and have been impressed by the professionalism of our city employees, especially those who are out working in the field in the public eye on a daily basis. Those employees are the most important asset that our city has. I want to maintain an environment that will allow them to do their work and to be compensated at a rate that they can plan, raise, and educate a family with. As your next city councilman, I have the time and the experience to devote to this position, and I will work hard to regain and keep the trust of the citizens of Chubbuck and to be responsive to their needs.
My name is Joshua Ellis, essentially born and raised in the community. My wife Cammie and I, we currently live over by Ellis Elementary. I have 6 children, the oldest which is 15 and getting ready to drive, and the youngest which is about 3. I spent some time in the Idaho Army National Guard. I'm a graduate of Highland High School. I also graduated from Idaho State University with a business degree, and I currently run and operate a real estate brokerage and build homes in the Chubbuck area.
My name is Ryan Lewis. I'm a local attorney here in the Pocatello Chubbuck area. I'm born and raised in the area, the middle of 7 children. Went to public school here, graduated from high school here in the area, and I served an LDS mission then in the Brazil Porto Alegre mission. After returning, I began studying at Idaho State University, received a bachelor's degree in finance, and then went to the University of Idaho College of Law, and upon graduation returned to this area, and I've been practicing law here since 2003. I'm married to Kim Lewis. We've been married 17 years, and we have 5 children, and we love to spend whatever spare time we have with our children.
My name is Jeff Mansfield, and I'm running for the Chubbuck City Council. I'm married to Amy Mansfield, and we have 3 children, and we lived in the city of Chubbuck for a little over 17 years now. I work for a civil engineering company here in town, and my wife is the branch manager for a home health agency, Encompass Home Health.
My name is Craig Parrish. I'm an attorney here in the Chubbuck-Pocatello area. I've been lived here all of my life. I was born here in Chubbuck, grew up in a house on Parish Lane until I was 10, and moved into a house out on Chubbuck Road where I live now. A few years out getting some education and establishing my own family, but spent most of my life in Chubbuck, living there, taking care of my family. I've got five young boys that live in my house. The oldest is a student up at ISU. Got one on a mission for my church. I've got a sophomore at Highland, a 7th grader at Franklin, and a 4th grader at Syringa Elementary. My wife plays the piano up at the junior high for the kids and is a certified teacher. And my mother was a teacher in the district here for years. My father was a certified teacher, so we kind of do teaching. It's one of the things we do. Much of my family's still here in town. We run significant businesses and own property out in the Chubbuck and throughout Pocatello area, and have for all of our lives.
My name is Earl Phippen. I've lived in Chubbuck for 20 years. Prior to that time, I spent 20 years in the United States Air Force and worked for a government consulting firm in the Washington, D.C. area. I have 9 children, 25 grandchildren, and 2 more of them are due in about 6 weeks, so we're looking forward to that. And I like Idaho. My roots, my ancestors grew up in southeastern Idaho, and so it really has felt like home for more than 20 years.
Well, I've always believed that people should take an interest in government, in all phases of government, and so after I retired, I started attending city council meetings and taking interest in what was going on there, and that after being there, I was asked if I would consider running for city council, and that's what brings me to this point.
As I stated earlier, since I've retired, I had time to attend the city council meetings and have been part of the process during 3 years of budgets. Working with the city council, I have learned how the process works. As a citizen, I've developed the knowledge to know what passes and what doesn't, and what the criteria is for the city.
I've always enjoyed political science. It was probably one of my favorite subjects in high school and in college. I'm fairly active in the community. I serve with Scouts, generally doing helping individuals with different merit badges that deal with citizenship in the community. I've also currently been serving on the Chubbuck City Council for the last 4 years. I am active in the Greater Pocatello Association of Realtors, and I spend time on the Bannock Development transportation board, looking at transportation and ways to improve transportation in and around the valley and the community. One of my greatest interests is in trying to improve the quality of life that we have in the area. Like I said, spend most of my time riding my bike to and from Hawthorne Junior High and Highland High School. I don't know if my wife would let my kids ride at 10 speed like my parents told me I had to do, but I enjoy the area, and I think I have some expertise that will continue to help make it a better place to live.
My interest in working on the City Council and serving on the Council does not stem from a desire to come in and clean up City Hall or shake things up. I believe that our local leaders have, by and large, made good decisions and have made the decisions they felt were best under the circumstances. I don't come with an axe to grind, and I see Chubbuck's local development as at a transitional period. I see so much potential with the new Knudsen Boulevard. I think it's an exciting time. I want to be involved in the process during this period of time, and so I'm excited to be involved with that. As for my experience with local and civic organizations, after graduating from law school, I was appointed to be one of the local lawyers on the Eli Obler Law Library Committee at Idaho State University. I have served in that capacity for several years. Presently, I sit on the Civil Bench and Bar Committee for the 6th District Court, and recently I was made the president of the Portneuf Inn of Court for our 6th District lawyers.
I've been approached over the past several years and requested that I run for City Council by several of my neighbors and friends, and I've always considered a civic duty that I had. In the past, I've served in the military for 23 years. I served in Operation Enduring Freedom, and I served as the superintendent of the civil engineering flight in the 419th Civil Engineering Squadron. While I was at Idaho State University, I served as the student body president of the School of Applied Technology and also as an ASISU senator. I feel like I have a lot of experience through my career as a civil engineer, a professional engineer, in that I work with numerous communities and I work with their city councils to help them plan and develop projects to make their communities better places to live.
I was approached about running for City Council this time by some concerned citizens who felt like we needed to have good representation, and I have considered it in the past. In fact, I've been asked in the past by others, by some of the elected officials, if I would consider running, and my response to that has always been, I don't think it's the right thing to do at this time, and frankly, the boss at my house hasn't always thought it was a good idea either, but I've visited with her about it several times, and I think maybe this time she's finally on board with the idea. I believe that if we don't elect good leadership, we're stuck with what we get, and we deserve it. And I think there's an opportunity out in Chubbuck to do some good things right now. There's some real growth that's coming, and it's a vibrant and exciting community that we need to make sure that we control that growth so that it goes in the way that we want it to, so that it's not something that just happens and we have to respond to it. One of my reasons that I dislike Boise is because it seems like it's all kind of growing so fast that it's not under control by anybody, and the cities kind of throws up their hands, and you can't ever get anywhere because everything's blocked off. All the roads are being built at the same time, and you can never get around the community at all. I think better control of the growth and better control and maybe a little better foresight from city fathers can avoid that. Chubbuck to this date has done a pretty good job of that, although that the intersection over the I-15, I-86 has always been a pain and still is. That's going to get done here eventually, and in the meantime we're all going to cuss them for not getting it done quicker, but it's just your money at work there. I've been involved in civic community and government organizations for many, many years. Of course, those that know me well know that I'm a former district governor for the Lions Club, and the Chubbuck Lions Club is the only service organization in the community out in Chubbuck that bears the Chubbuck name, and has been for It's been there since 1950. It's 52 years old, I think, 53 years old. I haven't been a member the whole time because I'm not that old, but I've been a member over 30 years, and we've done a lot of really good things out in Chubbuck. And as the civic organization out there, we actually started the Little League program, and we do some tremendous things for the handicapped and disabled people in our community. We buy eyeglasses and hearing aids for those that can't afford them, and provide other services for those that have need. It's something that I think needs to happen, and that kind of service is the kind of service that makes our communities better. So I've worked in that respect. I'm on the board of the Family Services Alliance, which is the group that helps victims of domestic violence and has a shelter for them and helps find some placement and resources and services until they can be safe. I'm a big-time proponent of the Boy Scouts of America. I've been a Scoutmaster and a unit commissioner, and currently I'm serving as unit commissioner in the Boy Scouts of America, and believe that that's an important organization for raising our young men to be the kind of men we want them to be. Of course, all of my sons participate in that, as did I years ago, and so that's been an opportunity for me to participate. I've been in front of the Chubbuck City Council many times on behalf of clients who have needs or concerns, and on my own behalf to advocate for positions that I thought were important. I think that being involved is critically important to having the right to have a say. It's not okay with me that you sit back and complain all the time but never get up and go say, let's make a difference and make something better than what it is now. And unfortunately, a lot of folks are more the Monday morning quarterback. They complain after it's done, but they don't do anything to get the right decision made in the first place. I'm not that guy. I tend to get involved and jump in and say, hey, something needs to be fixed. And so this is an opportunity for me to do that. Many of you recall that I ran a decade ago for prosecutor here in this community, and 4 years before that. So my signs are retreads. You're going to see some signs up that are just going to say parish, parish, parish. I had to cut off the part that said for prosecutor because I'm not running for prosecutor. I am running for city council, and I believe that I have an opportunity to provide some things there with my legal training and my business background. I think I can provide some direction and some help and be an instrument for change and an instrument for good in our community. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity to do that.
Well, my interest in working for the City Council, with the City Council, is just an interest in being more generally involved in city government. I guess I want to be more a part of a solution as opposed to a part of a problem if I'm a part of a problem. I have a lot of experience in public service. I particularly work with youth and young single adults for more than 20 years. I worked for the federal government as an Air Force officer for 20 years, and so I have experience in all kinds of government bureaucracies at a variety of levels. For a time, I served as an independent consultant for a local, what we will call a community development bank, in terms of market research and analysis about how to better serve possibly underserved borrowers in terms of community development. And so I think that across the board, from big government to city government, and just an interest in being involved, plus the fact that I've been teaching at Idaho State University for 20 years, or off and on for 20 years or so, and I'm just interested in applying some of the lessons that I've been teaching and learning during that educational academic experience.
I think the city should be quite aggressive in code enforcement, but at the same time, I think they should be considerate of the particular person that they're dealing with. Oftentimes, a person who doesn't keep up their property, it's an attitude, and attitudes don't change too fast, but we should encourage them, and I am a very strong believer in maintaining a beautiful city, and I think that helps all of our attitudes and the pride that we have.
Code enforcement is an interesting issue. Seems like in Chubbuck, if you lived there 20 years ago, if you didn't have 3 vehicles parked in your yard, you weren't from Chubbuck. Since that time, we have done a great job of enforcing the codes and ordinances of the city, both for beautification and for maintenance. I think that our ordinance enforcement is doing a good job. We will enforce, when necessary, the codes to make sure that property is maintained in a manner that is safe and efficient, safe for our children to be around, and efficient in the objective that when people need to have access, it's safe for them.
You know, this is a fine balance. The city needs to maintain and enforce its codes. If we're not going to enforce them, there's probably no reason to have them. But at the same token, I don't think we want to have an instance where, you know, if somebody's got their garage door open or somebody has a vehicle that's parked on the side of the road, that, you know, within 15, 20 minutes, you've got neighbors calling and, you know, we've got the police over or the code enforcement officer over there issuing citations. I mean, there has to be a balance. But I do feel that it's important that people respect one another and, you know, make it an enjoyable environment for people. People that let their yards go, people that leave vehicles on the streets unattended for, you know, days, weeks, and months at a time. It takes away from the feel of a community in the neighborhood. And so I believe that you do have to enforce those codes, but I also believe that there needs to be some leniency in how you do it, so that you're not pitting neighbor against neighbor just because somebody maybe isn't as great at getting their garbage can off the street when maybe they should.
With my background, I've been involved with enforcement of city code and state statutes. I believe that enforcement of the code is important. However, I believe that the code must be clear and concise and set forth the standards to which it holds the local citizens. I believe that notice should be appropriately conveyed, and I also believe that as a municipality enforces its code, it should always do so in a courteous fashion and in a careful fashion, respecting its local citizens and ensuring that the citizens know the standards to which they will be held. And if that's the case, I believe that code enforcement is necessary for maintaining a beautiful city, a safe city, a clean city, and a city that people want to live in. And so I think if done the right way, code enforcement can be very helpful with that.
I agree that it is important for our citizens to have safe, clean, well-kept neighbors. I think it's important that the city use caution and understand the enforceability of the codes that they pass. However, once those codes are in place, I think it's important that they are enforced and that the city take the necessary measures they have to ensure that our community is a safe, clean, well-kept place to live.
I am not a fan of aggressive city code enforcement. I think that government spending their time harassing and hassling the citizens is the wrong use of government. I think that if a citizen has a serious complaint about their neighbor's property and it is causing actual and real damage because of the condition, then perhaps something ought to be done by law enforcement. But the fact of the matter is, I think for the most part, government ought to stay out of our lives, including code enforcement. The reality is, I think it's a bad use of limited resources. I think that everybody has a different idea about what's pretty and what works for them. I don't believe that having everything covered in well-maintained grass is a particularly pretty community. I'm more a fan of xeriscaping as a general rule. I think nature does a pretty good job of creating beauty all by itself without us horning in, and I think we ought to be able to leave a lot of it the way that it is without requiring that it be cut and manicured to some code enforcement officer's preference. I don't like that. I don't think it's what they ought to be doing at all. I think that if somebody's having a tough time keeping their home property maintained, the paint is chipping and the roof needs to be replaced, that the community neighbors ought to get together and help that person get it done. I don't think the government ought to be involved in that at all. I think it's a bad use of limited resources. So I am not a fan of aggressive city code enforcement. I believe there are times when it has to be done because something becomes unsafe and an attractive nuisance for our children. But those are pretty limited times. I think it ought to be very, very carefully watched and kept and not become a an organization that comes in Gestapo-like and tells people how to live their lives, what color and how often they have to paint their house, how big it has to be, what kind of yard they have, what kind of flowers they have to plant, what it has to look like as compared to the neighbor. I don't like that at all. I don't think it's the right thing to do. I think it's very troubling and, in fact, expensive for local business to have to put in expensive planters, planter boxes, grass strips in front of their businesses that do nothing to enhance the value of their business, do nothing to enhance the bottom line of the profits they might make, do nothing to encourage them to stay in business. All they do is increase costs and give a job for somebody as a code enforcement officer. I'm not interested in creating a job for code enforcement officers. I don't think that's what we ought to be doing. I don't think we ought to be requiring it of our local businesses either. I think it's the wrong thing to do. I think the community looking good is important, but there's a way to do that without making it cost a whole bunch of money. What's happening now is not that. These huge swales that they're creating in order to have water retention ponds are becoming swimming pools. We've had heavy rains the last few weeks in our community, kind of unusual, but the result of that is we've had these big, huge mud piles throughout the community in these water drainage pits that, frankly, are nothing but unsightly infestations for mosquitoes and other harms to arise in our community without any way to monitor or regulate it. I think it's unnecessary, I think it's costly, and I think we need to fix it. So with regard to aggressive code enforcement, I'm not a fan. I think it's an inappropriate use of limited resources.
Well, I think the city needs to be positive and aggressive, if you will, in code enforcement. If you're not going to enforce the code, why have the code? But I think an accommodating kind of approach where if there's a problem, we go to a particular citizen and we tell them what the problem is. They may not know. We tell them what the problem is and give them an opportunity to make it right. Then, of course, if they don't within a reasonable period of time, I think you have to be even more aggressive than that. But I think if you can talk to people and give them a chance to correct the problem before you have to drop the hammer on them, so to speak, then the solution is going to be better, more accommodating, more long-term, less likely to be repeated in the future.
I think that's going to be probably a pretty good decision. I don't know too much about the auditorium district and how it operates, but I do know that if they are successful in keeping a steady stream of events, that is going to bring people to Chubbuck, and that's going to help all businesses.
The Knutson Boulevard expansion was a great thing for the city of Chubbuck. As we look at an auditorium district being put there, there are still problems with what is expected from the city and from the auditorium district. There is still construction that has to take place before a building can be put on that site. There is a canal located on that property that belongs to the BIA, and it needs to be relocated before any building can be built. The CDA has met with the auditorium district, and they've made advances to see if the city of Chubbuck would pay for the relocation of that canal. Right now, I am not in favor of the city of Chubbuck paying for that canal unless there is a firm amount of money discussed, not just when it's possible will you pay. So we need to have a firm commitment from the auditorium district on a firm amount of money, not just something in the future that they may decide to give us.
I'm excited for this decision. Chubbuck, for the longest time, has been considered a bedroom community to Pocatello, and the majority of some of the major projects always considered Pocatello. With the completion of Knutson Boulevard, Chubbuck is now in a unique position with 69 acres to grow its commercial tax base. That is one of the areas that Chubbuck has struggled with as far as increasing its tax base. versus just having residential. So the fact that Chubbuck could even compete for it and be presented as an option, I think, is a great feat. And as you look at that, I think that's what you want in a community, is the ability to compete and to offer, hey, come, take a look at us, see if it will work for your business, for your retail establishment, for your restaurant. I think there are still some items that need to be addressed with the event center going in there. But as those are addressed, I also think that it's going to give Chubbuck the ability to actively go out and market itself to different businesses. So as we come out of what's really been a 5 to 6 year recession in the building industry, I think you could see some substantial commercial growth that will be driven by the placement of that event center there.
I'm very excited that the Auditorium District is looking at Chubbuck as a location for their event center. I know the board, I know the individuals on that board, and I know their dedication to the community and the tireless way in which they work to help the community. They have a very thankless job, and they are dedicated to improving and bringing good things and doing good things for the community. I believe that the Auditorium District or the Convention Center on the Knudsen Boulevard property would be instrumental in increased commercial development of the area. I believe that it would be instrumental in bringing hotels that would utilize the convention center. I believe that it would bring restaurants that would utilize the convention center and the hotels, and I believe that having that in Chubbuck would be instrumental in developing that Knudsen Boulevard property properly.
I was very excited by this announcement. I think it's a great addition to our community, and I'm excited anytime something of this magnitude can be brought into our city. I think it will bring events into our city which will help promote growth and promote further development of businesses in our community, and I think it's just a great addition to our community.
Very concerned about the decision of the new community events center, because what you're doing is bringing in a government-owned piece of property. Won't pay taxes, won't increase our tax base, won't do anything to help pay for water and sewer and garbage for anybody else, and we'll get all of that for free because it's a government facility. I think if there's a demand for it, then private industry ought to have an opportunity to participate in the creation of it. The other side of that coin, of course, is if it comes in, all of the service industries that go with it will come with it, and then we will have increased our tax base to some degree. I haven't seen enough information on that to know whether we should or shouldn't do it. What I know is there's an awful lot of reasons why maybe we should not, and there are perhaps some good reasons why we should, and I think some extensive study will need to be done before we can agree that that's what the next step ought to be for that property.
I think that's a good decision. I think the Knudsen Boulevard or corridor, whatever you want to call it, I think that is an ideal location for something like an event center. There's plenty of opportunity to construct not only parking lots, but access in and out of the parking in a way that's not going to obstruct traffic on Yellowstone or Hawthorne Avenue. And there's an opportunity for development and community presence and involvement there, not only with the event center, but other potential business entities that might decide to locate there in the future. It's just it's centrally located to a lot of functions in Chubbuck, and I like the idea. I like the location. I think that it's really going to be a positive kind of thing for the community, not only for Chubbuck, but for the area in general.
I think that is going to be up to the business community a lot themselves. In the last 6 months, I haven't seen any activity or that I could detect of businesses coming to the Chubbuck City Council meetings or any interactions. I think that they need to initiate communication, and at the same time, I think that city council members need to be out in the business community and talking to business owners about their situation and what their needs are.
That's a good question. It's really good because when you look at Chubbuck, we've expanded well in the past 10 years. The Chubbuck Development Authority has used its monies wisely in preparing for future growth with infrastructure. The latest one would be the Knutson Boulevard project, which was approximately $3.5 million for a 5-lane road with stop signals, and it creates a great access between Yellowstone and Hawthorne roads. It's being well utilized right now as we speak. We also, several years ago, did Evans Lane, which is just across to the east of Knutson Boulevard. That was redone. New sewers, water, and streets were laid in, and now we have a new business. The Maverick Station is moving in there, and they're currently building a new fuel stop. The Idaho Central Credit Union built its large building in Chubbuck and now has a branch located on Yellowstone and Knutson Boulevard. We have just received the new paint shop, which also is located on Knutson Boulevard. So our relationship with the business community is very good. We've been responsive to their needs for access.
You know, this is one of the important things. Most of us stay here because we enjoy the quality of life. But quality of life is directly tied to your ability to earn a living and pay the bills. I'm currently 38, or I'll turn 38 here this month, and I can start to think of a lot of the friends that I had that aren't in this area anymore, and they've chosen to leave the area because of jobs and opportunities that were more prevalent in other areas. And so I think the city and the business community really have to look at how they're going to actively go out and market the area. And I don't believe that it can be just up to the Bannock Development Corporation, and they do a phenomenal job. But I do feel that we need to continue to see both the city of Chubbuck and the city of Pocatello working together, much as what happened with Allstate. Allstate was looking at the area. Initially, they were looking to locate in Pocatello, and in the end, it ended up not happening in Pocatello. It ended up landing in Chubbuck. That's where you see a synergy, where what we're going to say is, hey, let's compete and see where the individual businesses land. And really, when you say what's good for one should be good for the other, I think Allstate is the best example of that. Let's put our best foot forward. Let's try to make sure that we can attract businesses to the area and higher paying businesses. I think that over the next 4 to 5 years, again, I think there's an opportunity to look out across the country at areas where the quality of life is not as great and try to attract them here. Sell the cities. Say, you know, we want you to come take a look. Here's the benefits. See if it's a good fit for you.
I think it's important that there's always a dialogue, an open forum. Sometimes business owners may feel like they're shouldering a large burden for the community. However, I think the city needs to be able to articulate specific reasons for doing what they're doing. The city needs to make principled decisions that affect business owners equally, so that one business owner doesn't see or perceive a double standard in how other business owners get treated. And again, that goes back to the code enforcement issue, and that is you need to have clear standards, and you need to apply those standards in a fair way as between all business owners.
I think the relationship between the city and the business community can be strengthened by involving businesses in decision-making processes, involving them in community events, and helping them to recognize the valuable role they play in our community and the asset that they will be bringing to our community.
I think a very real effort needs to be made by city officials to reach out to our local businesses and encourage them to stay and to grow and be a part of what we do. The fact is, what happens now is the only time you get a visit from a city official is when they're coming in to cite you for some violation or cuss you out for something you're not doing they think you should do. There's not a positive relationship at all. What there is a very negative relationship, and every time a government official shows up, people cringe. Ron Reagan used to say, "The government's here and we're here to help," was about the most scariest words he could think of. I don't blame him for that. I think he's right. I think the government leaving those businesses alone, other than encouraging them to grow, it would be the better way to do that. And I think that, unfortunately, sometimes the city and the city government is far more of a stumbling block than it is a starting block for businesses, and that needs to change. There needs to be a better relationship with our business community on a regular basis.
I guess the simple or the one-word answer might be dialogue. I think city officials need to be willing to sit down with business leaders and talk, understand concerns. We have the opportunity for the next several years to use some creative kinds of financing with tax increment financing in the district to enhance community development and business development and make Chubbuck really a business-friendly kind of place in a way that businesses will want to come here and want to locate here and have families here and all of that kind of thing. I think the main thing we need to do is just city officials and business leaders just need to talk and understand mutual concerns and what they can do to help one another out. Because if it's in a healthy, growing, vibrant business environment, that makes Chubbuck a better place to live, a better place to raise families, a better way to address all kinds of community issues in a mutually agreeable sort of way.
Generally, I would not support higher taxes. I think that there is always a way of solving a problem. That's by throwing money at it. But very often, you can stand back and say, all right, how can we solve this problem without throwing money at it? And find another way of doing it without throwing money at it or as much money at it.
We just discussed that in City Council in the last 2 weeks as they redid the budget for 2013. The question rose about raising taxes and road maintenance. During those discussions, it was found that we do have monies in the budget that can be earmarked for road maintenance. And as we met and listened to the City Council and the department heads talk about their monies, there was sufficient monies to be put into a budget earmarked for road repair and to keep our roads in good shape, rather than let them go until they're so bumpy we can't drive on them. But the process is already in place for the monies to be earmarked for road replacement and repair next year.
I'm not a big fan of higher taxes. One of the major issues, pretty much as you talk to anybody in any demographic, is that they feel that our taxes are higher than in most places in the state and even in other surrounding states. I think as a city government you really have to look at, can you do more with less? And that is a challenge. Everything costs more. It costs more to resurface the roads than it did 5 years ago. It costs more to pick up the trash than it did 5 years ago. The same increases in expenses that an individual resident is seeing in their gas and their power, the cities are seeing those. However, when you're dealing with other people's money, which is a city entity you do, I think you really have to question, do you just raise taxes or do you find ways to try to do more with less? Recently, through this last budgeting process in the city of Chubbuck, we were able to increase the road maintenance fund from around $35,000 to approximately $170,000. In the next year or two, if we set aside another $40,000 or $50,000 a year into that, the city of Chubbuck will be able to maintain or resurface all of its roads every 10 years. And we will be able to do that without having to raise taxes on the individual residents and citizens. So I do feel that there are ways that you can improve the services that the city can offer, but not just looking at ways to increase taxes on the individual citizens. And by the way, that's one of the reasons why people will look at this area, is if they see that we're holding the line on taxes and that we're not raising them, our area will continue to look stronger and better than other areas where they are raising the taxes to increase services.
That's a really good question. We want to provide, as a community, necessary services to an appropriate level, and at the same time, the local citizens and residents are stretched thin in many and maybe most instances, and I believe that we should look for creative solutions in handling the challenges of providing services and at the same time attempting to maintain the current level of tax. And the City Council has to be diligent in seeking creative solutions that balance the scales in such a way that that services aren't cut and taxes are not increased.
I'm always hesitant to say that I support higher taxes. I think it's important that we maintain our current level of services, if not increase the level of services that are provided. However, I think it's more important that we explore different avenues of financing and that we work together with our citizens in order to come up with plans and capital improvement projects and plans that will help to provide the services that are necessary for our community while at the same time maintaining a rate that is comparable and fair to our citizens.
I do not. I believe we are almost taxed into failure as it exists. I think that we need to create, in fact, I will advocate the creation of an efficiency committee made up of local concerned citizens to come in and look at what government's doing now and see how we can pare it down, cut it back, and get it to the basis that needs to be done and not be increasing those services. I don't think there is a demand for increased city services. In fact, I think in some respects we have far more than we need. And I think it can be cut back rather drastically. And I will be advocating the creation of a committee of concerned citizens to look at that and create some better efficiencies within our system and save us some money and lower our taxes, not raise them.
Well, I think the first thing that one needs to ask is, do we, is a higher tax level or a higher tax rate really needed? I think if we do some of the other things in terms of business and community development and can raise the overall property value and a healthier business climate where we have good paying living wage kinds of jobs, if we can do those things, I think we can increase tax revenue without having to increase tax rates. It's kind of like if we can create a sort of a rising tide, it's going to lift all the boats in the ocean. So if we need to maintain the current level of services, but I don't know that you have to raise taxes to do that if you can take some of these other actions to increase revenue. If we have more people paying the same amount of tax, we have more revenue. And I think that would really address the issue of additional services.
it's very certain that we need more street maintenance and that there is a critical need in that area. However, I have done a bit of research on this and talking to people, and I think that there is a whole lot more progress made in that area than people really realize. And I think the city needs to keep on in that direction that they are going, and that situation will be resolved.
Well, I think they would, if it was put properly, they would increase their taxes for street maintenance. However, because we have gone over the budget and we have looked at it, and as we looked at the emergency expenditures and the sole source expenditures, we also see the need to earmark funds for street maintenance. So right now there's no need to raise taxes for street maintenance. The money is there, and it's earmarked starting next year. So the citizens will start to see a change.
As I just stated, the city of Chubbuck just did that. And within the next 2 years, I believe we'll be on track to redo all of our roads in 10 years. Now, there are some existing roads that need to be not just resurfaced, but they need to be entirely rebuilt. And if you look at the Chubbuck Development Authority over the next 7 years, Dell Road, Whitaker Road, Stewart Road, those are the three that I know of that are coming up in the next 3 years that will have major renovations and major overhauls done to them. One of the challenges, though, is how much do you do and where do you stop? And I believe there needs to be a balance. Knudsen Boulevard, the last 2 years, we've taken the money that would have done Dell Road, Whitaker Road, and these other projects, and we've pushed them back for 2 years in order to create this new road so that we could try to attract commercial growth and development into the city of Chubbuck. Now I believe it's time to start directing those funds into the residential neighborhoods that are in serious need. One of the challenges in just finding more funds is if you take from one area to go to the other area, if we're not going to raise taxes, then you have to start to prioritize. And that's where I absolutely agree. The roads need to be better. However, you generally have to start setting a plan so that you can build new roads, take care of the old ones, and extend the life of current roads. And I think right now we're on a trajectory that at least the citizens of Chubbuck can appreciate that we're making progress. There may still be some that aren't entirely happy that we can't do all of the roads right away, but sometimes that's just not possible.
I believe that our local streets need to be kept in a working and a safe condition. And to the extent that a city is much like a household, you have budgeting issues, and sometimes you end up in a position where you have an emergency or you have an unforeseen circumstance, and it's required that you spend more than you had otherwise allocated. I believe, again, that a city has to be careful how it spends the taxpayer money. However, I think the solution for streets and street maintenance is found within the city of Chubbuck already in the Chubbuck Development Authority. The tax increment financing that the CDA receives has been and can continue to be put to a good use in maintaining streets and engaging in positive development. I believe that the development of the Knudsen Boulevard property and the increase of the tax base will further support the dedication of funds to improve our streets, and so we need to continue commercial development, and I think the CDA has done a good job of dedicating funds and should continue to dedicate funds for the continued maintenance and improvement of city streets.
As I've been out campaigning, I have heard this comment multiple times, and it sounds to me like it is a recurring issue, and that multiple citizens have concerns over the condition of our streets. Whether or not we need to increase funding for the street maintenance, I can't speak towards that. I don't know exactly where our budget is on that item. However, I do think that we do need to look for alternative sources for funding for the street department, and I think the most important part of moving forward with improving our streets and providing this service for our citizens is planning. We need to make sure that we have a master plan in place and that we're planning smart, effective ways to make the streets better.
Well, I don't happen to agree we need to increase funding there. I think we need to increase the efficiencies in the existing program in order to make it work a little better. I think that right now we are doing a lot of things that we have no business doing. We are creating and maintaining extensive city parklands that frankly don't need to be there. And the money it costs to do that, you cut that out right now and maintain the streets with that. I think they do a pretty good job actually of maintaining the streets. I don't have a lot of complaints with that. And I don't think we need to be increasing a bunch of costs in order to do more of it. Pocatello is not quite as well on top of that, although they've done quite well the last little while compared to what they used to. But out in Chubbuck, I don't even perceive it as much of a problem. There are streets that take some time to get fixed, but the reality is they're getting it done as best they can, and if we were to increase some of the efficiencies, we could make it a little better without increasing any funding.
I've had a chance to review some of the plans that are involved in the involved with the tax increment financing revenues and the like. And the plan over the next several years includes repair and maintenance of, as near as I can tell in Chubbuck, all of the major areas that need to be addressed. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's street is going to get fixed the first year. It's going to take some time, but there are provisions currently with the program that we have with the tax increment district to take care of those kinds of roads in a way that we can meet the needs, develop a long-term plan for ongoing maintenance. It's just not all going to happen next summer. And I think I'd be less concerned about worrying about raising additional revenue and making sure that we follow through on the plan that's already in place. And in a few years, everybody's streets are going to get fixed. We'll have an ongoing maintenance program that'll work for everybody.
In all of the talking that I have done with citizens, the subject has never come up.
That's a good question. The city of Chubbuck the city of Pocatello went through quite a bit of turmoil in their working to pass a law. The city of Idaho Falls has also gone through the same experience. I believe that you'll see the smaller communities such as Chubbuck, Blackfoot, Soda Springs. The smaller communities will also address that issue, and yes, I believe that you'll see an ordinance on the books in all cities and all towns in Idaho guaranteeing equal protection under the law for all individuals.
One of the things that I struggle with is I think cities need to be careful about the ordinances that they pass. I think you need to be looking more to the state level to make sure that you're in line with what the state ordinances are. The other question that I would have is, to some extent, I wouldn't want to be discriminated based off of the fact that I have 6 kids. There are probably some people that when I go out in public are like, wow, that's a lot of kids. So I wouldn't want to be discriminated against because I chose to have a larger family. In the same token, somebody else, based off of the lifestyle that they're wanting to lead, shouldn't be discriminated against either. However, I don't know that we should necessarily be advertising it all the time. If I'm applying for a loan, I should probably get a loan based on the merits of whether or not I can repay the loan. and my personal lifestyle or the choices that I've made in that sense probably don't need to be pushed out there. And so I would just say that there should probably be caution in creating ordinances that could put you in confrontation with what the state law is.
I guess as an initial matter, I think it's very important that a society and that the success of a society is in the fair treatment of individuals and in the respect that individuals feel within the community. Having said that, I believe that such an ordinance such legislation is better left for state and federal decision makers and not local decision makers.
So I don't feel like the city of Chubbuck has an issue with this item. As I've been out campaigning, I have not had anybody express this concern to me. And subsequently, I don't favor promoting ordinances or code that provides favoritism and or discrimination to any one person or group in particular, but rather should be representative of the majority population. In addition, I feel like an item such as this should probably be addressed more on the state level than in a community-wide level.
I do not happen to believe City of Chubbuck needs that ordinance. I didn't think Pocatello needed it either. That's a solution in search of a problem. We did not have an identified problem in Pocatello, and yet they passed it anyway. That problem is not identified out in Chubbuck. There's not one instance that somebody can actually cite to say somebody was denied a service, somebody was denied an opportunity because of their sexual orientation. That just doesn't exist. That example is not out there. Why are we passing rules, passing laws, passing discrimination ordinances in situations where there's no evidence there's a need? My first response when somebody says there ought to be a law is no, there should not be a law. We have enough of those that are already not being properly enforced. We don't need any more. We have enough laws on our books right now that protect all of us as citizens from other people discriminating against us. They don't have a right to beat us up regardless of what we think or don't think. They don't have a right to deny us most of those services that are out there because of our orientation, because of our race, because of our sex, because of our gender. That stuff's already out there. I don't think we need to create a new set of special rights for somebody who doesn't, there's no evidence that they're not being properly served as it already exists.
Well, I guess my initial response is, what kind of a general as opposed to a specific problem do we have with that? If there are issues with regard to individuals in the lesbian, gay, and bisexual and transgender community, if there are specific issues of discrimination with regard to, say, a particular employer or a particular city office, I think we ought to address those on an individual basis. I don't know whether we need some kind of a blanket ordinance or regulation unless the problem is a lot more widespread than I think it is. Clearly, discrimination is not something that should be acceptable, but I think you can address it most directly on an issue-by-issue basis or a case-by-case basis until we determine that there is a widespread general kind of discrimination. Then maybe we can look at some other kind of anti-discrimination ordinance that's general. I think laws and regulations work better when they're targeted against specific problems and keep the scope as narrow as possible, consistent with, good city management, good city regulation.
That is, I think, best done by being out and mingling with the public, letting them know that I am interested in public issues and issues of the community and the city. The other thing that I am doing personally is putting up a website where I will be discussing the issues that face the city, and then I plan to have a blog besides in order to engage the public in a discussion of whatever might come up?
Again, that's a good question. Councilman Marshall, in his platform to run as mayor, has already addressed that issue. What his proposal is that we have citizens called from each subdivision to meet and to discuss the needs of their own subdivision, so that we have the views not of just one subdivision, but the entire community, so that we understand the needs and the desires of each subdivision. And in that text, we can work as a city to strengthen each subdivision with the strengths and the improvements that they need. Not every subdivision needs a park. Not every subdivision needs the road repairs. And so as citizens bring concerns to that committee, they can be addressed not only by the city council, but the department heads and the mayor. And so all citizens throughout the community can have their views expressed and acted upon by city government.
This is always a challenging one. Generally, you get a lot of input after a decision has been made if people don't agree with it. Generally, as I approach a decision, I try to reach out to the different demographics that we have in the city. Generally, what I've found is that as you talk to different people, depending on where they're at in their stage of life, they generally have a different take. Someone who's on a fixed income or in retirement or nearing retirement, they are absolutely opposed to spending any more money than is absolutely what's necessary. If you go to a younger demographic, someone that's probably in my situation where they're in their earning years and they're always looking for ways to increase their income, they generally don't seem to be opposed to a little more spending if it's bringing in businesses or if it's bringing in shopping or restaurants. Well, there's a balance that has to be met there between the different demographics. Oftentimes I will reach out to try to get a pulse of the individuals. What are your thoughts here? And I don't just go to those individuals that I know most likely probably share my same views. I try to take the time to make sure that I reach out and talk with people that might have a differing opinion than myself. What that allows me to do is to find a balance between the needs of all of the constituents in a city. Not everybody plays baseball. Well, we have a lot of parks. You could save money there. However, I think having parks and places for kids to go is an outlet that you have to have. And yet there are some that would say, well, could we save money if we didn't have as many parks? Maybe we don't need as many tennis courts. Maybe we don't need a roller hockey rink for ice hockey or skating. Well, that could be true, but in the same token, we have a lot of people that have a lot of different interests. Some of the things that we've done, we generally try to publish things on the website. We send information out in the newsletters. Sometimes I wonder if people actually read the newsletters. But I'll have to admit, I don't know that I always read the newsletter either. And that might be more because I'm dealing with the meetings on a biweekly basis and I'm aware of the information that's coming. But I would ask that people consider the fact that politics is very local and that people take the opportunity to get involved. Oftentimes we get frustrated with the things that we see happening on the national level, and sometimes our control or our sphere of influence is very limited on a national level, but it is very concentrated on a local level, and the decisions that are made in the city government really do affect the daily lives of our constituents every day. And so I would hope that people would take the opportunity to get informed, to get involved, to look at the issues that are confronting the city, and then make a decision. I can be contacted by cell phone or on my email. Oftentimes I'm working, and people stop by and say, hey, Josh, I need to talk to you. And I'm always very willing and very open to stop what I'm doing and to talk to people to get their opinions.
Well, I think local community leaders need to be available. They need to not be afraid to engage in dialogue, and they need to make themselves available, whether that be by email or by a telephone or by direct contact. And that accessibility will hopefully lend itself to people discussing what they would like to see in the community. I've heard people say, we want to see change, but it would help if we were able to discuss the specifics of what kind of change they would like to see. We need to make ourselves available at the community level for discussion and so that people have that opportunity.
As I've been out campaigning, I've had multiple people tell me that if I get elected, they will definitely be calling me and they will definitely be coming to me and discussing their concerns and their issues that they currently have. I think as a public official, it's our obligation to make ourselves available to the public, and I also think it's important that we listen to the public. The tagline on my campaign signs says, "Your voice will be heard." And as I've been running for the City Council, I've had multiple people come to me with concerns and with issues of current items that they would like to see resolved. And so I would hope that as a council member, I could be that voice, or I could be able to listen to the citizens and help take their concerns to the council.
Well, I want to be available to them. I do not suffer from anonymity. That's not one of my blessings. That's probably because I'm far more willing to open my mouth than maybe what I should be. My wife reminds me of that from time to time. I am more than able and willing to engage people in conversation, say, what do you think about this? How will it work? What should we do? I think that spending some time out talking to the neighbors and up and down the streets talking to the businesses is a great way to do that and find out what their needs are. I've done that. I know the people to some degree. I've taken great lengths to get to know the businessmen in Pocatello and Chubbuck and get to know my neighbors by serving in their churches and in their organizations and in their service and civic organizations and working with them in their athletic programs and going to their events. I know those people, and I'm happy to visit with them at those things, have forums if necessary before we make any decisions and change the issues that are out there and change the policies. I think that using the media to some degree is a good way to do that. I'm not particularly convinced that using biased blogs that are out there is a good idea. I think they're talking to a small group of people who really frankly have their own view, and so you're kind of wasting your time talking to them. But I think things like this public access is a good way to do it. I think talking to people and being able to share your thoughts and encouraging them to do the same in reverse is the best way to get the word out and share and talk about how do we make things better.
Well, it's a couple of things that occur to me. For one thing, most of the neighborhoods in Chubbuck that I'm familiar with are they're relatively well-defined. They're small. It seems to me like every once in a while it'd be okay for city officials to just get out and walk around the streets in some of the neighborhoods and talk to people that you see on the streets, working in their yards, community activities and things like that. I think city officials need to be at community activities and engage in dialogue with citizens, but if we can just, figuratively speaking, wander around the neighborhood on occasion and talk to people as you see them more on their turf, that's one thing that'll help. I think if there are ways to do it without disrupting the the workforce or the process of work on a day-to-day basis, it's okay to be where people are when they're working or on lunch breaks and just maybe sit down and have a cold drink or a cup of coffee and say, okay, what's going on? What are the issues that concern? How can we in city government help? And just talk to people on, not so much in an office or in an interview, but just in a casual, friendly conversation, keeping it low key. Then I think we have a chance to maintain some dialogue between those who are elected and those who do the electing. And by having these conversations gives city government additional insight into what the people are thinking about and what are the important concerns for them, and then we can move forward and try to address those in other forums.
I personally would like to encourage everyone to become more interested in city government. As I have attended city council meetings for the past 6 months, and it has really increased my knowledge of the way the city runs, and frankly, it's given me a greater appreciation for the dedication and the hard work that the city employees have. I have also gained a greater appreciation for their planning and their forward thinking. One thing that I think that needs to be addressed is the master planning issue. The last master plan that was made for the public, for the city, was in 2002, as I remember. Here we are, and I think that was planned to handle the city's growth for the next 20 years, and here we are halfway through it, and I think it just needs to be dusted off and looked at again.
We had a few experiences this last year with emergency purchases and sole source providers. And I stated that in my earlier comments. The sole source provider, there was a pump that needed to be purchased to finish the Knutson project. That night at City Council, the project was approved and the motion was made to purchase a pump for $85,000. Councilman Marshall questioned this practice and said, why is this a sole source? And it was discussed and then finally decided that this project would be put out for bid, which is the usually accepted practice. As this pump was put out for bid, the provider who originally was going to sell the pump to the city received the low bid. His bid was $49,471 versus the original purchase price of $85,000, which turned into a savings to the city of over $35,000 just because we went from sole sourcing to the bid process. And so processes like that show that we have money in the budgets to do road improvements and safety for the citizens of Chubbuck. We also this past year went through the purchase of a fire truck, which became an emergency purchase. That fire truck was presented at City Council as an emergency purchase, meaning that it had to be purchased right away. Prior to that meeting, a cost of $150,000 had been discussed in City Council. The cost of the new fire truck was $239,000. And then there was the discussion of getting the fire truck into Chubbuck. Common Carrier had bid the job at $5,000, but some leaders in Chubbuck said that they could have it moved from Florida to Chubbuck, Idaho for considerably less. And so that night, with no other discussion, the approval was given to purchase this fire truck for $239,000. After the truck finally arrived in Chubbuck, it cost the city of Chubbuck over $12,000 to have that fire truck delivered. Between that $12,000 and $239,000, that's over $250,000 that it took to get us that fire truck, compared to the original $150,000 discussed and approved by the city. Those types of purchases need to be changed. We need to go back away from emergencies and back away from sole sources, have honest and lively discussion, and then put those jobs out for the bidding process that allow companies to bid yet still maintain a profit. It was once said in the city of Chubbuck that companies expect to make more money off of the government. And while that may be true, it doesn't have to be off the citizens of Chubbuck. If we maintain the integrity of the bidding process, we find that we have monies in the budget already without raising taxes to increase our roads, to help with the insurance and the benefits for our employees so that they make not only a living, but can put money in the bank for savings for their children and their family. So as we've looked at this budget, we see that there is room for improvement. And so with the confidence of the electors in Chubbuck, we can go through with this and maintain not only our standard of living, but not raise taxes in the foreseeable future. One last way that we can bring increased monies into the city: the fire department is contracted with Powell County and North Bannock County for fire suppression. In 2010, Councilman Kent Kearns and Fire Chief King put a presentation on for the City Council and the Mayor and the department heads, as well as the public that was invited. What it came down to is the citizens of Chubbuck for fire suppression pay $33 a year versus $11 a year for the county residents. That contract has not been renegotiated since 2003, and if that contract would be renegotiated to bring the county residents up on par with the citizens from Chubbuck, it would increase the revenue for the fire department and reduce the burden on the citizens of Chubbuck for protecting the rural areas.
One of the things that I would like to share with those individuals that are considering me and the opportunity to re-elect me, I view my role on the City Council as one that should not have any preconceived agendas. Do I have my own preferences? Yes, absolutely. I would probably say I'm probably the most pro-growth individual that's running for City Council. Part of that is my upbringing. I grew up with a father that built homes. So instead of working on the farm, I spent my Saturdays sweeping up houses, cleaning up trash, and going to the dump. So my livelihood is enhanced by more growth. But I also look at where I live, and I look at the number of my siblings that are no longer in the area. Generally, one of the things that I hear from people that are older than myself and on a fixed income and that may not be as inclined to be seeking out as much growth is that they always make the comment, well, I wish that my kids or my grandkids were closer. Well, the way that you accomplish that is by looking at the jobs, by looking at the shopping, by looking at the restaurants. We still lose a lot of money to the Salt Lake area and to Idaho Falls. I would hope that in the next 4 to 8 years, as we've seen what Chubbuck has done and the position that we've put ourselves in, we can give people the opportunity to keep their money here and to stay here and to raise a family here and to have the ability to enjoy the quality of life. It's a great thing on Saturday to be 20 minutes away from Pebble Creek. For those that like to mountain bike, I'm not a big mountain bike fan. It takes a little more energy to get up the hill than it does to go down the hill. But so you start to look at the area, and really within 20, 30 minutes you can be on a lake fishing or boating. You can be on a ski hill. You can be in the mountains riding your bike. There are so many great things that this area provides. And one of the ways that we can share that or increase that is to allow people the ability to live here and to provide for their families. So I would just encourage people to look at that. As you look at Chubbuck, in the last 7 years, Idaho Central has built their corporate offices in the city. Allstate has located in the city. Wilkes Funeral Home, Dr. Stoddard's Skin Institute, Insurance Designers, and there are probably a few that I'm missing, and a few that have been there for 20 and 30 years. And so as you look at that, you look at the green tea. I mean, really, the green tea kind of started the city of Chubbuck. It was a place where people wanted to come and to dance and hang out, and it was right on the outskirts of Pocatello. And so we have a lot of great businesses that have been there for a long time. And part of their ability to continue to thrive is to have people spend more money in the area. I feel that I'm uniquely positioned to help the city grow. With that being said, as people come, I feel that people need to make their case. As developers come, they need to make the case for why their development will benefit the community, why it will benefit the residents. And I should be able to sit back and look at the needs of all of the constituents and try to make the absolute best decision that will do as much good for as many people as possible. knowing that at times there will be decisions that will be made that will affect one particular constituency more than another, and they may not agree with it, but at least if they can see that I've taken the time to analyze the information, to look at what its consequences would be, to look at what its benefits will be, I believe that they'll find that I am dedicated to the city of Chubbuck and to this valley, that I'm interested in finding the best decisions to improve our quality of life. All of my other siblings have left. I'm the last one in town. And I enjoy it here, and I want to be here. So I would ask that you consider me for one of your 2 votes for Chubbuck City Council, and I appreciate this opportunity to present some of my views.
I think going back to what I was asked at the outset, and that is my interest in serving on the council, and I would like to reiterate that I'm interested in serving on the council, not because I have, like I said, an axe to grind, not because I want to fix the things that are wrong with our city, because I don't think that's the case. I want to serve on the city council because I think that there is a lot that has been done that is right. Hindsight is 20/20, and I believe that our local leaders have made good decisions, and I would like to continue that. So often our decisions in this at this level are not between right and wrong. They're between decisions that both have pros and they both have cons. And as a city council member, I believe that my training and my education equip me to ask appropriate questions, to understand the importance of clear and concise laws that govern our local community. And I believe myself to be a person who is not locked into a specific platform. I am open to persuasion for what is best for the city of Chubbuck. And for that reason, I believe that I will be well equipped to make the best decisions that I can after a proper inquiry for the city of Chubbuck, and I, for those reasons, would like to serve on the Chubbuck City Council. Thank you.
As I have been running for the campaign, I've had multiple people ask me if I knew what I was getting myself into and if I was crazy, and multiple times I've asked myself the same question. But I think it's important that as citizens of our communities that we are involved in our government process. One of my favorite quotes is by Edmund Burke. He says, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." And I think it's important that we as community members, we are involved in our community and we do the things that we can to make our communities a better place. I think I have a lot of experience working with governments and working with city councils involved in water, wastewater treatment plant projects and collection projects, and I think that I can bring a lot to the city council in making our community a better place to live.
I haven't got a set out list of things that need to be changed in Chubbuck at this point. I know there are some issues out there that need to be considered and things we need to talk about as far as what would be the best way to serve the needs of our community into the future. And I'm willing to listen to anyone who says, hey, I have a concern, here's what it is, and see if I can't help them come to some idea of what the answers to that might be. One of the issues that I'm aware of is there's a movement afoot by some people to look at the possibility of unifying our services with the fire department and the law enforcement with the city of Pocatello. I'm more than happy to look at the possibility of whether that's better or not. I don't know that it is. My Lions Club, my dad and his brothers were the founding members of the volunteer fire department that's out there and still exists today. And there was a time in this state when it was the single best department in the state under most measurements. And I don't happen to know for a fact that we'd be better off with a full-time fire department. In fact, I doubt very much that that's true. But I'm not unwilling to look at it and decide what would be best for Chubbuck as a whole. I don't happen to believe we need a new fire station. I've heard some discussion about that. I think that would be a monumental waste of time and resources. The reality is we are very lucky in the fact that we're barely 2 miles square, and our existing fire station, by nothing but fortuitousness, is right in the middle of those 2 miles. Everybody can be properly served by the station where it's at. Building a station somewhere to the north of that so that we can have a nice new station with more facilities and be able to better serve North Bannock County because of our contract with them is not a good reason to do it. We're not in business to make money as a city. In fact, we're in business to spend as little as possible and provide minimum services. And so the idea of building one just so that we could do more is not the answer. I feel the same way about the police department. I don't know that it needs to expand. I'm not sure that it needs to contract. It might be better off if it was combined with Pocatello and Bannock County as a single law enforcement agency within our county, as the Idaho Constitution provides. I'm not sure why we have two full sets of administration, either in the fire department or in the police department, and I think that needs to be looked at. It may be better to eliminate those as individual departments and unify with the city of Pocatello and or the county and make those more functional. But I say maybe because I don't know that. The theory in my mind sounds good. Less government is almost always better government. But the fact is maybe it's not in this particular case. Maybe we cannot provide quite as good a service if we are not our own standing entity. So that needs to be looked at, and we need to make some decisions about that. This big community rec center, the Chubbuck Auditorium District planning on putting in there, there's way too many questions before an answer is ready to be had on that. It is a beautiful area out there, prime for development, commercial development, and taking a big major portion of that off of the tax rolls as an initial matter doesn't make any sense to me. I have a hard time believing it's the right thing to do. But it might be. I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying I haven't seen enough information to convince me of that. Other issues concerning the sewer pipeline that was put out north of town with the promise that someday that money would be cut back out of our taxes once all of those homes developed out there. There's about 8 homes now on that pipeline. It was built for 80,000 people, and we're paying an astronomical amount for our water and sewer service in Chubbuck right now as a result. Something's got to be done about that. That money has got to be turned back as soon as we can, and we have got to not make those kind of decisions that cost us well into the future for services we did not need, that were not in demand. I like foresight. At the same time, I understand the money is sacred. It needs to be spent very carefully in order to improve and enhance our community without going out and buying services and purchasing construction projects that are well beyond our need and that very heavily tax our residents, who many are on limited incomes they simply cannot afford. And so we have to make those kinds of decisions with better information than just what the public might think. I don't think we make decisions based on some public opinion poll. Media does a pretty good job of putting out their biased opinion, whatever it might be. And if that influences how people think, we need to do better than just use that as the measuring stick for why we do what we do. Sometimes you don't get to be everybody's friend when you're on a council because you make decisions that offend somebody. In fact, most of the time when they come in with a question, there's going to be people who are for and people who are against. And you always run the risk when you're willing to step up and make a decision that somebody might be upset with you. I have broad shoulders. I can manage that if I need to. I am prepared and willing to do the right thing, figure out what that is and make that decision. But I am a fan of less government. I am a fan of smaller government. I am a fan of less taxes. I do not believe that it is government's opportunity to take care of us from cradle to grave. I think it is our responsibility as individuals to figure out how to take care of ourselves and our families without government interference, without government involvement in those decisions in our daily life. And if we can figure out how to manage that, we can let government do the basic, simple things they need to do and stay out of the rest of it. It would be a much better society if we were not dependent upon government for social services of any kind, because we're all taking care of each other. I believe we have the capacity to do that within our religious and civic organizations as they currently exist. The reason we don't do it is because government's there doing it instead. Well, I think we ought to get government out of doing that instead. Let us take care of ourselves, our family, and our friends. Let government provide the roads, the law enforcement, the fire suppression, the ambulance services that are necessary that probably won't be provided by private industry. Let us take care of the rest of it ourselves. I think we're smart enough as groups and as individuals, we're educated well enough, we can make those decisions ourselves. I would like to be on the Chubbuck City Council in order to implement the kind of policies that encourage less government, less spending, and better services as a result. For that reason, I ask for your support as a candidate for Chubbuck City Council.
I think that to me, the whole key to being in government at any level, but particularly in municipal or city government, is elected officials need to focus, I think, on being good neighbors and creating a friendly atmosphere within the neighborhoods, between individuals and elected officials, between those who work for the city and those who benefit from those services. And if we could just figure out a way to improve the level of dialogue among citizens and among elected officials, I think that would go a long ways to helping us address the problems, find out what the problems are to start with, and just create a more healthy working relationship.